First, the concept of generating a tsunami is difficult to buy into, considering that the Tsar Bomba isn't sufficient to release the energy required to create a true tsunami. Even using position and sea bottom shape to enhance the effect, you are stuck with two key factors: distance in which to build and propagate the wave, and harbors are shallow compared to the deep sea, where a tsunami is able to fully form and build towards a shoreline. The Poseidon is claimed to be a harbor detonation, so the math comes out to indicate a large but fairly localized shore wave with high levels of radioactive contaminants. Second, the Poseidon is a propaganda weapon, due to the nature of how it would work, namely to render a high population density area uninhabitable for a substantial amount of time, 100 years or more. It is more effective in this manner than actual use. Third, we have this super advanced, super small, super powerful nuclear reactor. There are quite a few issues with this. It is supposedly far smaller than a nuclear reactor that powers a submarine, which is possible. However, energy is energy, meaning there needs to be a fission rate that matches or exceeds the rate of a nuclear submarine reactor. Since there is no technology today that provides a perfect, lossless conversion of one form of energy to another, efficiency would require this super reactor to produce more energy than is used. In all current nuclear reactors, the usable energy from a fission reactor is thermal, which must be converted to a form it can be used in, commonly by heating water in boilers to create steam, which turbines convert to mechanical energy for propulsion and electrical generation. More efficiency issues, but even a torpedo as large as the Poseidon does not have room for all of this equipment. There are ways around some of this, but those produce massive amounts of waste heat and leave a rather clear thermal trail for a number of satellites, not just military versions. Fourth, while the Poseidon has no crew, it supposedly uses a highly advanced AI and positioning system. These require shielding from the radiation produced by a nuclear reactor, and a reactor on the scale claimed would require significant shielding to protect those electronics. Again, an issue that can be overcome, but which doing so placed additional limits on the torpedo. I could keep going and going picking it apart, but the basics that everyone knows and understands is that in this universe, the real one, everything is a balance and a trade-off. So, unless the Poseidon is built with alien technology or comes from another reality, it isn't everything claimed. There are too many trade-offs to allow it to be what is claimed. Now, there is one thing that does bother me on this topic. The purpose of the Poseidon torpedo. You have the simple fact that the US, NATO, and China are non-first-use nations. They will only use nuclear weapons after nuclear weapons are used against them, which by definition makes them retaliatory weapons, aka deterrents. It is too slow to be a retaliatory weapon, because once the US or NATO are aware of a nuclear war, two things will have happened. First, hell has already been unleashed, and second, they have been made aware of these Poseidon torpedoes and would be far more closely monitoring them. So the claimed purpose is negated by the reality of the devices. However, they do fit the description of a first strike weapon. The reason that I say this is that in peaceful conditions, monitoring for devices like the Poseidon is more relaxed. They can only be effective if they can get in position before they are being hunted, and as that position requires that they reach the target harbor, being too far out would just dissipate the energy instead of building it, as in a 2 megaton size the energy needs to be focused more tightly to get a large enough wave effect and focus the radioactive contaminants into the target city. And once this Poseidon torpedo is at speeds of 100 knots, it will not be able to hide. Water density on a submerged object at those speeds requires significant propulsion and would have to be at a significant depth to avoid cavitation, yet in general coastal areas are shallow, comparatively. So, either this is actually a first strike weapon or the intended purpose is not to target a coastal city. It cannot create an actual tsunami, it lacks the energy release. The Tsar Bomba, even at 100 megatons, lacks the required energy release and would require over a dozen such bombs simultaneously detonated at a depth of at least 300 meters. There has been more than enough nuclear tests in various types from airburst to sea-based detonations to collect the required data, including a test of the Tsar Bomba at 50 megatons. It could destroy a carrier, or contaminate a coastal area, and by extension a growing area of the oceans that would eventually spread and dilute to the rest of the world. There is the question of whether it is real or not. The Russian Navy is a shadow of its former Soviet self. This is reality. The US Navy was designed to win against the former Soviet fleet, and it can certainly sink the current Russian fleet. This is also reality. When Russia is weak, they have historically promoted doomsday devices as a way to stay in the game. They seem to have actually built cobalt bombs, so I would not be surprised if they build at least one full-size Poseidon mock-up and show it off to reporters as well. This does not mean that the weapon would work as advertised. The Russians really believe they can fool everyone. From the Potemkin villages on many things the Russians would like for people to believe is just not so. A Poseidon mock-up with a midget in control would be enough to fool the press into spreading alarm far and wide.